Well, this is how we set up for acrylic painting. This is a wet palette, a normal wet palette. And what I'm going to do is, rather than using it with the normal products, which is a sponge that comes with it, I just use paper towels because this one is probably about 15 years old. Just put some paper towels in there and just pour some water on. Once this thing's set up, you can just start putting your palette down. I don't like to be shy when I put my paints down. And if you're committed to painting, you're not gonna try to be too big of a cheap person. You just want to put the paint out and live with it. I like to just kind of randomly drop stuff down because of the way I paint. I already have the color wheel in my head. I already know what's going to happen as I mix things, so I don't really think about it too much in terms of what's laying there. I just kind of grab what I see. So normally I don't use brushes that have dried paint on them, so don't let paint dry on brushes. It's just insane. Yeah, I'm just gonna get a gray going on this background, just something for a foundation. If I had a better brush, it wouldn't look so crummy, but for what we're doing right now, I will make this work. I tend to just kind of throw a handful of layers down randomly when I started painting. Once you get something down, I'm just kind of covering the palette. I don't really care about how it looks at this point. And always wash your brushes. Every time you use a brush, wash it, or you end up with the brush of shame like these. So, big tip, hair dryer. I really won't paint without one. So once it's dried to the touch, I'll just add another layer. So I like to do kind of these transitions, light on the bottom, and then get darker in the sky. And when it comes to mixing paint, I like to kind of knock things down a bit. Like using it straight from the tube has kind of a weird look to it unless you're really aiming for a cartoony look or something. As you can see, it's pretty transparent. You can see the underpainting, the blue underpainting still there. Pull some of this green and I'm gonna grab, I think that's, blue. So I can knock that down so it's not too psychedelic. So I'll grab some of that, maybe a little bit of that. So you can see I kind of built a little pool there, but I'll drag that across the whole painting. So yeah, it's got kind of a green foreground and then kind of this weird muddy sky. That's what we're gonna go with today. All right, throw another kind of darker layer right here. It's kind of doing some random stuff. So at this point, we just have a foundation. Here's like the sky, and then this is gonna be the bottom. I don't really get out tape and measure stuff. In real life, you observe things, and maybe there's like kind of a hill to your reality. I just tend to paint this way. What am I gonna paint? I don't even really know what I'm doing. This is just kind of the normal process I do when I make stuff. So I'm gonna make sure it's nice and dry. It's not, so I made some little marks. That really doesn't bother me. I'm gonna hit with the dryer again. Cool. So I will call that the foundation for now. And of course I can go back into it and render it and change things. But for now, that's kind of a good place to start. So the way I typically paint, in that, even in the backgrounds, I tend to try to go and use my darkest colors first. So if you're gonna do a character of any sort, just start with like your darkest color that you're gonna use. So this will do kind of some red thing. I'm literally just making a blob to see what happens. But what's important is how you build things. So this is just a flat kind of character, or a flat focal point. All right, maybe it's some ugly alligator thing. Oh my gosh, that thing's horrible. All right, we'll do that. All right, I'm gonna blow dry it. At first, I've just been pulling stuff off the palette. I'm gonna start mixing stuff. Right here, I have a piece of plastic with a white background, and that's what I'm gonna use for my mixing. So I didn't like how light this is right now. I'm even gonna put a little black in. I'm gonna break the rules. I'm basically just gonna start covering what I already made with a darker color. When you paint, you're usually kind of emulating reality. So maybe all the bottom of this thing is in shadow. It'll be darker, so we'll do some darker tones like that. All right, I've kind of mixed a new little area in the palette. So right here, I've got this kind of weird red. I'm gonna start adding lighter reds in there. I'm gonna start rendering the shapes a bit more and knocking down these like half tones. The real rendering will happen once I kind of break up the smaller brushes. As you can see, I'm starting to build shapes. Like here's the bottom, middle tone, and then the top where we'll get some more highlights on there. Once we really build it, then we'll put in some tones on the bottom that are lighter. Actually, we can do that right now, actually, because I already got it mixed up. So I'm gonna take this tone that we already have, and I'm gonna add some blue to it to make it cooler. So we got the original tone, and this is the blue tone that we're adding. I'm gonna actually add even a little bit of white. So of course it's gonna make, like a muddy purple. So I'm gonna use that to render in to the underbelly of this thing that we don't know what it is yet. I do a lot of rendering with super small brushes. The majority of my paintings are very labor intensive. So I kind of just stroke things in like a pattern. The consistency of the paint that I mix will kind of change as the painting goes on. At this point, I usually think of my paint that I render with at this point in the painting is kind of hot butter. That's the consistency I go for, is like hot butter. Like if you put butter in the microwave for a minute, it'll kind of get to this melted butter thing that I like. So this is just my first layer of kind of rendering something in. And sometimes I'll build things and end up just completely covering it. I don't want to lose too much of my drop shadow. I might actually go back in and add more drop shadows. As you can see, just kind of go in here and build things up. So this is more reflected light. So basically, if the light's coming down from the top, this is going to be the brightest part. This will be reflected light, so the light kind of bouncing off the grass, coming up into this object. So we're basically emulating the way light falls on things. So everything naturally is black or dark or void of light, and light falls on it. So the more light that falls onto a darker object, the brighter it gets. And that's why when you paint like this, it feels more like real life. That's why it looks more realistic. Even if you're painting something totally abstract, if you follow these principles, you can make things look like they're real, even though it's complete fantasy. So we'll turn this into some sort of eye. Yeah, a lot of new painters will paint the whites of the eye white. That's not a good thing because you just basically put holes in your painting. So if you have the skin tone of whatever you're painting, usually use that first. If you're painting somebody's eye, just use the same color you just used for the flesh on their cheek. Like if this was their cheek, use that same color for their eye tone. Otherwise your painting's gonna look weird. You're just gonna learn a ton if you watch someone paint. You just have to watch someone build something. Watching someone build something is just huge, because if you don't know how to build it yourself, you can keep going back to the canvas and trying to do things, but really the thing that's going to really change it for you is when you watch someone else do it. Or, I guess there are people that are self-taught that really figure stuff out over time. As you can see, I just kind of work off these different pools, but the trick is just to not make too big of a jump. So I'm putting in more and more white as I paint. The trick is, if you do too big of a jump, you're going to ruin the painting. It's just going to look like you weren't controlling it. Tattooers abuse white when they paint. When you make tattoos, it doesn't matter if you use a ton of white, because you have to see the tattoo through a layer of skin. And for some reason, it just works. I really don't fully understand why tattooers get away with it. In fact, it seems like the tattooers that get the most attention use the most white. A lot of it has to do with trapping in light. On a painting, you really only want like 3 or 10 dots of white, like period of like pure white. If you put too many, it just starts looking dumb. It looks like there was like a snowfall, like it snowed on your painting. Tattoos do kind of get to that point. Sometimes a tattooer will, do a tattoo. They want to do like a lot of sweat or something, and it just looks like it snowed. I don't know. I don't think it's a very good look. Well, it's a decently rendered eye. I mean, I could spend another hour and a half on it, repainting it. I don't know, I think it's cool. So I'll probably work on this a bunch more, but I think people got the point as to what we're doing, and that's building shapes. You know, starting from a dark and then going to the next tone to the next tone, and I'll make more videos, but I think this is a good one to start with. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it.